Beyond the Forbidden.
Welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got Tim Swartz. I've interviewed him before on one of my older shows. Like I said, been doing this since 2010. I originated as Cryptic Knowledge Radio. I've evolved over the years, had a couple of different names, but Tim Swartz, welcome back to this edition of Beyond the Forbidden.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you asking me to come on today.
Oh, man. Well, you have 1,000 books, or you've co-authored at least 1,000 books, So, I just, first off, this is the first time I've talked to you. I've only talked to you once, one other time at least, maybe twice, older podcast. But, since we spoke last time, our good friend, Tim Beckley, has passed. So how is everything like I know y'all are kind of research partners and things like that. How is everything like with your research collaboration? Were you able to get some of his material, just everything? And how was your life like? Because I know y'all are close friends,
Right. Oh yeah. Well, it was tough when he passed away. I'll have to admit that, because we were close friends and had been friends for a number of years. Gosh, more than 20 years. I mean, we first, it's funny because one of the first books that I ever bought through mail order from Gray Barker's Osirian Press turned out to be a book by Tim Beckley. And it was like his first book that he wrote when he was about 15 years old. But, there's quite a bit of age difference between us. So, that book had been out for quite a while by the time, I got to be old enough to have cash and be able to write a letter to order the book. But it was, gosh, what was it? It was called Subterranean Mysteries, and
I can't keep tabs on all the books that he did, and you too. I know you got a lot of books and you co-authored a bunch of books, but I definitely miss them, man.
Oh yeah, well, and he was a presence in my life every day. If he would usually call on the phone every day, and if he didn't do that, he would at least send me a couple of dozen of emails, because we were always working on stuff. That was one of the we had mutual interest in all kinds of different subjects. And when he resurrected his publishing outfit, his book publishing outfit, which was close to around the time that we reconnected again, I think that we put out a number of books every year, naturally a number of books every year, sometimes one or two every couple of months. Because not only did he have me, but he had other writers and proofreaders as well as part of his little company. That he had this mind. I'd never be able to have kept up with him if I tried to do the things that he did. But he had this mind that was just constantly going, and he always had at least two books working at the same time in various stages of production. So, and I do miss that, working on, one day I'll be working on one book, the next day I'll be working on the next one. And I miss that. And myself and people like Sean Castile and Scott Corrales have gotten together to try to produce new books in the same vein like Tim Beckley's Global Communications, but none of us quite have that. Boy, I don't know what that energy.
I know his energy.
Yeah.
And when I last spoke with him, we've emailed a pretty good bit, but I only interviewed him, I think maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe once. But we've communicated and talked on the phone a few times, especially since I've been podcasting since 2010. But his energy, I don't know how. You can call him and then he'll be kind of moping around like, man, I feel like crap, I'm making, and he sounds terrible, but whenever you give him like a few minutes to settle down, and he's like, pew, pew. I'm talking about he just hit a different level, Tim. I don't know, definitely one
Yeah.
of a kind, and I don't know where it is. Maybe I'll find it whenever you start speaking about your book here in a little bit. But was he the publisher of Steam Shovel Press?
No, no, that was Ken Thomas.
Oh yes, Ken Thomas.
Yeah, Ken
But
Thomas,
but
who also
Tim what?
recently passed away.
Oh, he died. When was that?
Yep. Oh, probably sometime over the winter, over this past winter. It
Damn,
would have
I
been.
did
It would
not
have been.
know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It would have been late last year, 2023.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, Ken, like Tim Beckley, hadn't been in the best of health for a number of years. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a thing with I like collecting older magazines. It's just I don't know. If I had to pick one thing that I'm a nerd when it comes to a nerd, of course, books. Everybody that in this field does books, but
Right.
but older magazines with our genre like UFOs, paranormal, ancient mysteries, conspiracies.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love collecting old magazines, and I remember seeing some of his. I haven't read all of them yet because I have so many, but Tim has a lot of articles I haven't read yet. I see his
Oh,
name on different
yeah.
magazines. I just haven't read. But let's go ahead and get into your book. Oh, everybody the reason why I brought up Tim, because first off, this first time I mean, Tim Beckley, because I knew Tim Swartz is really good friends with Tim Beckley. And I want to let everybody know that the interview will be in the link or linked in the description below for everybody to check out that interview that I thought I lost. I thought I lost that interview with Tim Beckley. And we did the interview 2017 or 18. It was somewhere around that time, and I was devastated. But I found it. I was new to Zoom. It was downloaded into some kind of weird cryptic file, or I don't know. But I found it anyway. It'll be linked in the description. So Tim, with your book, mimics the others among us. It came out. What was it? March last year,
Yeah.
2023, something like that.
Yeah. It's been out about a year now.
I was wanting to get you on last year, and a lot of that I had to reschedule something. I don't. I remember you responded back, and I never. It's like I told you, it's tough sometimes having a little kid, but
Hmm.
and then sometimes I feel like I need a secretary to kind of But I do the best I can. Basically a one man show. I have a Facebook page manager that helps me out, but on the Facebook side. But what inspired you to write this book? Because, like I said, I know you've co-authored a lot of books. You've written a lot of books. Well, what made you want to go down this road?
Sure. Well, uh, it's like I said previously, myself and Sean Castile, especially, we've been trying to keep Tim Beckley's legacy going in the way that he produced books. Like I explained, I mean, just constantly had books in preparation and production, and when it came to Mimics the Others Among Us, we had just finished a book called Alien Artifacts, which this was a book that had originally been started by Beckley for his global communications, but really wasn't too far along by the time he passed away. So we decided that, I mean, we had already been doing quite a bit of research for this book. Let's go ahead and finish it, like we had finished we had also he was also working on a book about Dulce, New Mexico, and all the stories about the secret underground bases and aliens running amok and things like that. That one was a little bit closer to being finished. So after we finished that one, we went ahead and finished Alien Artifacts.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking, especially when I was comparing the notes from Dulce, which of course deals quite a bit with these alleged alien invaders, and I was thinking about how ubiquitous this whole kind of like humanoid aspect to people's contacts with unusual beings. All right, whether they identify themselves as aliens or fairies or what have you, and it got me interested thinking about, all right, you have all these creatures that humanity's been interacting with for centuries. All right, almost inevitably they look human. Very rarely do you come across things that look just so completely alien that people really may not have been able to identify them as alien or what have you. And if you look at all the ancient mythologies, where you have the gods and demons and angels, again, they have that humanoid look to them. Usually one head, usually,
Mm-hmm.
2 arms, 2 legs. And
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link to the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.
if you try to, and of course you can't use logic when it comes to unusual phenomena. That's one of the things that makes it unusual. But if you look at these encounters logically, that if you are dealing with things that aren't human, why do they have that humanoid shape? Are they doing it for our benefit? Or are they doing it for their benefit? What's the reason? And that's really what kind of got the whole idea started. So I approached our other writers, people like Scott Corrales, Nigel Watson from the UK, people like that. And I said, have you written anything?
Philip Kinsella too, right? Philip Kinsella.
Yes.
I just interviewed him. I didn't mean to cut you off. I saw his name
No,
on the
that's
book.
right.
I saw his name on the book. Tim, that guy has a brilliant mind.
He does. He does.
He's very, like you've been on hundreds or thousands of interviews, but you've been on some of the most top tier shows, podcasts, or radio shows. He needs to be up there. Like, he has a brilliant mind. I really think he's underrated. And I told him that, like, you need to be on some of the top tier shows for sure.
Yeah. Well, and we had him on a show that I co-host called The Paracast with Gene Steinberg. And it was almost a, just, haphazard mention of this case where friends of his who had written this book about the Rendlesham UFO incident had been visited by this guy who eventually claimed to be a reptilian from another planet. Now, whether or not this guy was or not, he had some very unusual characteristics and the ability to kind of like manipulate people into doing things that he wanted them to do. The first person that he approached ended up being absolutely terrified of him, even though he looked like a normal human being. He usually wore like a long trench coat type of deal, but he seemed to be, by appearance, perfectly normal. But she ended up just being terrified and eventually wanted him out of her house. Yet she allowed him to stay in an extra room in her house. Other people who worked with him noticed, very odd characteristics. He seemed to be hotter than normal. It's hard to explain. He was at one point he was living in the trailer in the backyard of one person, and the trailer itself. They actually used like one of these thermometers that can read a temperature from a distance. I think it uses like a laser beam, and it showed that this trailer, even though it didn't have, and this was in the UK, it didn't have any internal heating to it. This trailer had gone up in temperature. It was over 100 degrees on a, probably like a 40 or 50 degree day outside, with no reason why. And so after Philip told this story, I got back with him and I said, this is a fantastic story and fits perfectly with this book that we're working on. Do you want to write a chapter for us? And he immediately said, oh yeah, I would love to do that because, the book that we had been talking about, which was a reissue of a Rendlesham Forest a story, I think had a small mention of this case in it, but he had never told the full story in written form. And so you'll find that in Mimics Among Us. And it's among many, including the old mythologies, because, I love to try to find connections with people who lived thousands of years ago and their experiences with the stuff that is still happening today. I think that's one of the things that skeptics tend to try to gloss over. And not so much skeptics, more like debunkers. I'm a skeptic. It's healthy in this line of work to, have a bit of skepticism, because you just get approached all the time with just, the wildest stories. But so much of this unusual phenomena reoccurs time after time throughout the years to people who have no idea that it has occurred to other people in the past. And the further you go back, you still don't find a lot of differences to these accounts than what people are talking about today. And so that probably was the main emphasis to start production on this book. And once my writers and myself got going on this, I mean, this book, it was like 350 pages by the time we were done with it. So
I think the conclusion thoughts said close to 400 or something like that.
Something like that.
It was pushing 400. Yeah, it's not a really small book.
No, and I mean, we always try to keep, I mean, we want to edit our books so they're not a slog to try to read through. But I've had people tell me that even though it is almost 400 pages, that once they start it, they can't put it down. Because it's like, oh, what's this story about? What's this story about? Oh my God, yeah.
So your subtitle, they've been called many names throughout time: gods, angels, demons, the good folk, shapeshifters, extraterrestrials. So do you think that some of these things, or would you put like maybe archons, like a mind type parasite into this list also, Tim? Like, because whatever we're dealing with, it's not in this 3D reality. Maybe they could show up within this 3D reality, maybe they can possess certain individuals, whatever it is, or they can they can take over one's body. But over millennia, I think whatever this phenomena is, I think is that they masqueraded in many different faces. They show different faces to us, and I don't know how to put my finger on it, but I really think that like it's probably the same phenomena. You know what I mean? Most of, I'm not saying all, but I would say a good chunk, rather the ETs or archons or what some were called gods back in the day. I would say a good chunk, I can't say all, but a good chunk is whatever this phenomena is. And you have your good, your bad, and the ugly all in between. What do you think?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and you, if you go through this book, you'll find that we are probably dealing maybe with, uh, uh, gosh, maybe a number of different things. I don't want to say species or what have you, because you're right. I mean, there are encounters with beings that do seem to be not from this reality, that for somehow that they are able to uh, 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 enter into ours, interact with us, and then go back where they came from. Sometimes it seems like some of these things maybe do so inadvertently. I speculated in the book that when you have these really bizarre types of Bigfoot types of encounters, that we may not be dealing with a flesh and blood creature, like a bear or a cougar or something like that. That we have something that is able to cross that boundary from their world to ours, maybe accidentally or maybe with a natural ability, but they can't stay long. But while they're here, by all intents and purposes, they seem to be physical, except that they seem to have that ability to vanish at will or not be seen. How not to be seen. That seems to be a good characteristic with a lot of these things. And then you have the beings that seem to be with us all the time. Which
Guardian angels, maybe.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and again, what's a guardian angel? What's an angel? What's a demon? What's what are the gods? It's a matter of cultural interpretations. And I think that at least some aspect of this phenomena seems to work within those realms. That a couple thousand years ago, we believed in the gods and the angels and the demons, and that's the way these things presented themselves to us. Later, you had, say, like the fairies and the fae type of phenomena. Again, humanoid-looking creatures. And not the Disney-fied ones that you see, flying around with wings on their backs and stuff. Most of these encounters with the good folk, as they were often called, these things tended to be really human-looking, maybe shorter, sometimes tiny, but oftentimes not that much different from regular people, but with that fae characteristics that set them apart. But we don't believe in that kind of stuff now. Now we accept the idea that we could be being visited by extraterrestrials from other planets.
A gray, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Gray or reptilian or whatever.
Well, I mean, and you even have the extremely human-looking extraterrestrials, the Nordics, as they're called, that were made popular with, say, like the contactees from the 1950s. Well, they never really went away. We still get those kinds of reports that of very human, maybe long, but angelic looking almost, long blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, tall, other kinds of characteristics. But again, are we really being visited by, these beautiful extraterrestrials, or are we dealing with a phenomena that is earthbound, or at least within this and when I say earthbound, I don't necessarily mean just a physical material world, but earthbound with whatever then other realities associate with, with the earth, but not nuts and bolts spaceships coming from other planets with, engineers and scientists and explorers, even though they're passing themselves off as that. So again, we go, in the book, why? Why is this intelligence going through the trouble to interact with us, but not being upfront on their origins? That's the other part of the whole mimic phenomena, is that you never get a straight answer, it seems like. As the years go by, we've got, you could write a completely separate book on all the different places that these things say that they come from. So that's one of the fascinating aspects of the phenomena is, some people would say that it's a deceit, a deception that has gone on for centuries, and there does seem to be lies and deceit on what is going on. But again, that's our interpretation of the phenomena. So I mean, it's very difficult to go and put black and white judgments,
I have
on
a
these
theory.
things.
I have a theory, and what I love
Let's
about
hear it.
you, what I love about you, and before I tell you the theory, what I love
Okay.
about you, Tim, Beckley, and of course a lot of other researchers too, but you're not afraid to speculate. You know what I mean? Because you have to. First off, if you have to use your intuition, your gut, what does your gut tell you? And then maybe people that are listening to you, and then you put that theory, whatever, on a shelf, and you come back to it later. Or somebody that's listening to you speculate will grab that off the shelf for you, and they can run with it and can find something that you, me, or others couldn't find, that add some proof on top of that. So speculation is good. But first off, before I tell you what my theory is,
All right.
were you afraid to kind of go down that road? Because you've been researching longer than I have. I'm in since '06, been podcasting since 2010. But over the years, I kind of have leaned, especially the past couple years, leaned more heavily on the that they are here. They've probably always been here, maybe in different dimensions or whatever. Maybe not. I'm not saying all of them aren't coming from out there.
Right.
I'm not saying that they aren't coming from out there, but I would say a vast majority is here with us. But because, within this field, Tim, were you kind of timid with kind of going down that road, or maybe even talking about it? Because a lot of people in this field, they think they're all coming from out there, and it's either black or white, and a lot of people think that they are coming from out there instead of here, or they're not, they're all good, they're all benevolent instead of malevolent. What's your thoughts on all that before I give you my little take?
Sure. Well, I've never been afraid to approach really any subject, when it comes to this stuff. What I always say, though, is that I may speculate, I may throw ideas out there, I may give examples of things that may, either support or not support, my ideas. I'm willing to look at all of it, but I always say that I don't believe in anything. I'm not I'm not a believer, because once you start believing in theories and ideas, it tends to close your mind,
Puts
to
limitations.
Yes, to new information that comes in, and I always want to be ready to accept new information. I mean, to me, that's what it is all about. I mean, is being willing to accept new information, new ideas as they come down. So many people, you asked if I was afraid to broach some of these subjects, and there are so many researchers and investigators who have gone and really they only concentrate on one aspect. This guy only investigates UFOs, ghost, Bigfoot. That's crazy stuff, but now UFOs from other planets, yeah, that's fact. And then, you've got the Bigfoot some Bigfoot people who are just like, yep, Bigfoot, flesh and blood creature, that UFO stuff. Ooh, that's crazy. I'm not dealing with that. And I have my arms out, open. It's like, bring it in, bring it all into me, because my research over the years has shown that some way or another there seems to be an underlining unified field theory on all of this stuff. Now again, there could very well be physical nuts and bolts spacecrafts from other planets visiting us. There could very well be actual physical primates, hominid Bigfoots running around in the woods somewhere. However, this phenomena that we're talking about has a tendency to mimic those things. If those things are real, and they may not, who knows, but whatever, the phenomena also has a tendency to create their own versions of it, which I think, that confuses a lot of people and a lot of other researchers, who have a tendency then to throw those stories just out completely, unless the story perfectly fits with whatever scenario that they have bookmarked themselves into investigating, then it's not worth researching. It's not worth taking then that extra few steps to interview the people and get all the information. Myself, on the other hand, I want to know it. If you saw a UFO and then suddenly a Bigfoot came out of the woods and climbed on board and flew away, I want to know that story. Wow, that's great, So yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would be afraid of is closing my mind off to new information, to the point where I become rigid and unmoving, like some other people, or some people in the scientific community, who refuses to look beyond what they learned in college. And fortunately, I think we're seeing more scientists, more academia that is willing to start at least discussing and looking into these types of phenomena in ways that we haven't seen for quite a while.
And I totally agree, Tim. You have to, a lot of it interconnects. It's one jigsaw puzzle that makes a much broader picture. Like, I'm just looking at just a few books out of, I got tons, but just a few books. Rule by Secrecy by Jim Marrs, Alien Agenda by Jim Marrs, The Gods of Eden by William Bramley, The Cancer Conspiracy, I forgot who wrote that, Bloodlines Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier, The Terror Conspiracy by Jim Marrs. Like, I'd cover it all. You have to look at everything. You can't put limitations. Oh, I don't believe in that, so I'm just going to focus on this. I know you got to have some of your specialties that want to just, but just imagine how many brilliant minds out there that research alternative topics, that if they would have just broadened their intellect, their knowledge, as many topics as you, Tim Beckley, and others that you cover in research, imagine where we might be today, and yeah. But okay, here's my take. What I was going to tell you, what I think might, and I mentioned this, I'm going to try to explain it how I did on the previous, I forgot who I had on the show. I may have been talking to Philip Kinsella. I think that's how you say his last name. I may have been talking to him when I mentioned this. So Aleister Crowley, you talking about, like, because this phenomena, whatever it is that mimics, just like the title of your book, has shown many masks over the centuries, has shown itself in many different flavors, So what about the past 100 years, or a little over 100 years? Let's say, what do we really get? Kind of the gray, So why was that? Do you think that maybe Aleister Crowley, with his when he was communication with the lamb being that looks
Mhm.
just like a gray. And do you think that, and he was a famous occultist, you know, so
Mhm.
do you think that he kind of helped insinuate or maybe push that type of thing into our subconscious? And then Hollywood, I'm not saying it was just all him, but and then Hollywood kind of gets on board because they know something's going on too, you know, like some type of things that mimic masquerade behind many different flavors, but they put the gray, you know, they put the alien gray into the film, and that puts into our subconscious, and then people start seeing gray aliens, but they're actually having experiences, but whatever is in the subconscious at the time of like like the past 100 years or so, which has mostly been the gray, the reptilian, the Nordics, whatever's been in the subconscious at the time of that civilization, that's what that civilization mostly sees
Mhm.
and whether it be dreams, whether it be actual encounters, but whatever is happening, Tim, just like you said, they are mimicking there or they are showing themselves, I think, how we want, how we think that they should look like. I guess through maybe how we've been, maybe I hate to say it, maybe how we've been indoctrinated through films and Hollywood and through maybe even famous occultists like Aleister Crowley. How do we know
Mhm.
it's actually a gray alien? It might be. I don't know. I hate to, like you said, I hate to say I believe. You
Mhm.
know, it might be an actual gray little gray alien out there. I don't know, but it seems like really just the past 100, little over 100 years or so, only been seeing these types of beings, these types of aliens. But back in the day, it was fairies, it was this, it was that. You know, what do you think of all that, Tim?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know, what you're saying is like, you know, cultural expectations that we expect to see now. You know, the little big-eyed gray aliens coming from a UFO, because that's what we have been conditioned up to this point
Yes, conditioned.
into thinking that the aliens look like. And as you pointed out, you know, the big-eyed gray aliens is really a relatively newcomer to the whole UFO phenomena. Up really up until, you know, I think there's some other sporadic examples, but when it comes to culture like movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think, was the first movie to ever show um, an example of the big-eyed gray aliens. There were some other films in the past, say like there were the man from Planet X. He kind of looks like a gray. I mean, he's got kind of like that pear-shaped face. It's white, and the eyes aren't huge, but they're black and kind of oval shape. But really, in the early days of the UFO phenomenon, uh, at first it was the beautiful long-haired Venusians, and then especially starting in, I think it was like around 1952, there was a mass of UFO landings in Europe, especially like France and Switzerland, where people saw um, lots of little men, and throughout most of the 50s, then it was like little men sightings, usually in like spacesuits with the helmets. I mean, just really what you would traditionally think, you know, an astronaut from another planet may come from. Not little green men, you know, just little men. The little green men, that was something that was fabricated by the press. But it just goes to show you, though, I mean, yeah, even though the press was talking about little green men from Mars, there were actually not a lot of sightings of little green men. You know, mostly they were just kind of like gray or pasty faced. Some of them looked just like little people, just like a regular human being, just in, you know, just miniature, mini me, so to speak. You pointed out, though, Aleister Crowley and Lamb and his drawing of Lamb, which he did back in the, I think it was like the late 30s or early 40s. I can't remember offhand when that was.
I want to say it
But
was even
boy,
before that, Tim. I want to say
yeah,
it was like the 20s, maybe.
could be. I can't remember, offhand. But this was a, like a supernatural kind of like slash magic type of creature. If you look online, you can find his original drawing of Lamb. The thing is that his original drawing of Lamb,
1918, he channeled the entity.
1918. Okay.
1918. Yes.
Yeah, well, in the drawing that you can find online, it's got like little beady eyes. His original drawing of that, it had big black eyes. But some friend of his thought that that didn't look real. It didn't look right. So he drew over it and drew like the little beady eyes. And if I guess I haven't looked very closely, but somebody told me that if you look closely, you can still see some of the remnants of the bigger black eyes, on this thing. So there, I mean, you've got one of the earliest examples, of the gray, except that this wasn't supposed to be an extraterrestrial. This was a supernatural type of being. But again, as we discussed in Mimics, what's the difference? Is there a difference? Possibly not. Which makes the phenomena so confounding. And I can really understand why a lot of other researchers just throw up their hands and they don't want to deal with it anymore. It just gets too weird. And it does. But that's what interests me in all this is all these high strangeness cases. And why are they high strangeness and why are people experiencing them?
You see, I'm trying
People,
to go ahead, Tim. Go ahead,
well, I was
please.
just going to say that people being people, okay, most of the time you would think that they would go and, say they had like a UFO sighting. Okay, I saw a light flying around in the sky. All right, okay. Or I saw my dead grandma appear at the foot of my bed. But we get a few of those, but then we also get a lot of these. I saw this strange light flying around in the sky and it landed and my dead grandma came out of it. We get stories like that. And it's no wonder that so many people are reluctant to report these kinds of experiences, because you can get laughed at enough by saying that you saw, like a strange light flying around in the sky. Well, then go and attach that my grandma was piloting it, or Grandma Elvis and Bigfoot were piloting it. I'm going to extremes there, but you go and you throw in then these encounters with dead relatives or Bigfoot or what have you. People are like, okay, I'm going crazy. I'm not going to tell anybody about this. Yet these kinds of stories persist, and in a vacuum, information vacuum as well. Most of these people have no idea that other people have had these same kind of experiences, and that's what's really interesting. If this is just people hoaxing or mistaking natural phenomena for something weird, but no, I mean, you get these same kind of stories year after year, from all kinds of different places around the world. And with very rarely do any of these people realize that other people have had similar experiences.
And just like you said, so I pulled up Lamb. Let me see if I can screen share it. Okay, you see that? Okay. And I see what you're saying here. I'm just doing an image. You see, it's almost like there was like the little gray or the black eyes could have been here.
Yep.
And that's just
Yeah.
one. And, like that's not, but you can see see right there where my
Yeah.
cursor is. It looks like I see exactly. I've heard of that, but I kind of forgot about it until you mentioned it, how it really wasn't the correct depiction of, that he drew, and they changed it or altered the actual image.
Mhm.
But do you think that, with certain people in this community, the ones, let's say, that try to contact, you could have Stephen Greer CE5 or whatever. Do you think it could be dangerous because we don't know exactly what we're dealing with? Like,
Mhm.
we think that they're all benevolent entities, uh, whoever, that they mean well, and they're here to save us or whatever. But do you think that it's kind of dangerous to try to communicate with something whenever you don't technically 100% know what really is going on, what's going on behind the masquerade?
Right. Well, I always tell people, don't go out of your way, really, to try to initiate interaction with anything along these lines, whether it's out trying to establish mental communications with the UFO people, or getting the Ouija board out and trying to contact your dead aunt and uncle. Um,
Interaction
general
could equal possession.
Yeah, obsession. I mean, I just, I've really yet to run across any good, compelling stories of people who have done this, who have ended up happy, happy and rich with a great family, because generally, when you start to try to do things like this, it can lead to an obsession, and certain aspects of this phenomena tend to then exploit that, and then guide you down the path of madness, so to speak. Um, I've seen people who have been involved with researching and investigating the UFO phenomena, and not necessarily trying to initiate, contact with whatever intelligence is involved, just getting obsessed with the phenomena. And it does tend to steer your life into wrong directions. All right.
Mhm.
It's almost like the line from the movie The Mothman Prophecies, where and I'm not quoting it properly, and it's been quoted and requoted before. Like, when you stare into the abyss, the abyss stares back at you. The This phenomena, whatever it is very well aware of your interest in it. And once you open yourself up to that interest, then a lot of times it has a tendency to mess with you. And, and maybe it's just because of our own psychology that we don't understand, that we're just creatures prone to this kind of obsession. But boy, I mean, I have seen a lot of people just really have their lives destroyed by this kind of stuff, to the point where they've lost their families, they've lost their homes, they're living in cars, horrible things. And so you have to ask, did you do this to yourself, or were you helped along the way, due to your obsession with this kind of stuff? And it's probably a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. So yeah, I mean, I definitely tell people, don't try to initiate any kind of contact. If contact is being initiated to you, be extremely wary of it.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link of the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.